After 10 years of tending the smokers at Vance's Smokehouse, a century-old institution, the founder's son found me, wanted to talk about optimizing the workflow. I watched the brand-new Rolex Submariner on his wrist catch the light. Wiping my hands on my apron, I gave a quiet, "all right." Seeing no argument from me, he cleared his throat, puffing out his chest as he laid out his grand vision. "Come on, Art. What century are we in? Who still smokes a brisket for 18 hours over post oak? I've sourced the latest pre-cooked briskets. 15 minutes in the combi oven, and they're ready for the table. The cost is less than a tenth of what we're doing. Why don't you go supervise the trainees on the cutting line?" "This old way of yours," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "It's slow, it's expensive. It just can't keep up." My eyes drifted to the restaurant's ancient, hand-carved sign behind him, Austin's Original Brisket. I remembered his father, David, when he handed the day-to-day operations over to his son. He'd made him promise to uphold the tradition. A chill went through me, but I kept my voice even and just nodded. Okay, maybe he was right. Maybe my craft was obsolete. I slipped the worn leather satchel containing my family's secret rub recipe off its hook, untied my apron, and walked out. He didn't know. The century-old trademark and the James Beard Award that came with it for Austin's Original Brisket, that was me. His father only ran the place because I couldn't be bothered with the books. Now that I was gone, I was revoking the license to the recipe. Without the secret rub, the pre-cooked meat Leo Vance was serving was no different than the $50 vacuum-sealed briskets you find in the supermarket. When I agreed, a flicker of contempt crossed Leo's face. He looked at me the way you'd look at a piece of dusty, forgotten furniture in the corner of a room. He eyed my soot-stained chef's coat, his brow furrowed in disgust. "And, Art, try to keep things a little cleaner from now on. Don't track soot all over the back hallway." He pointed at my custom-built smoker, seasoned black by a decade of fires, then at the rows of prime briskets dry aging in a walk-in. His lip curled. "And all this stuff, it's taking up space. It's a health code violation waiting to happen. I want it all cleared out by the end of the day." I wiped my hands and picked up one of the briskets, feeling the texture of the fat cap, testing the give of the muscle. My voice was flat, betraying no emotion. "Leo." He was already turning away, but stopped, annoyed. "What? You got a problem with the new plan?" I met his gaze directly. "This fire in the pit," I said, "it's about managing a clean smoke, letting the heat wrap around the meat just right to lock in all the juices. This brisket, from trimming the fat, to the 3-stage rub, to the 18-hour smoke and the long rest. Every single step is connected. You skip one, you lose a piece of the soul." I placed the brisket back on its rack. "This pre-cooked stuff you're bringing in," I said calmly. "Which step exactly did it save?" Leo's face turned beet red. A spoiled, rich kid who'd spent his life running from responsibility. What could he possibly know about the craft? He stammered for a moment, unable to form a single coherent response, before his embarrassment curdled into rage. I'm implementing a scientific management system. It's about optimizing workflow," he roared. "I can't explain it to a line cook." He wouldn't meet my eyes. He yelled over my shoulder to the kitchen staff. "Anyway, your way is over." A few of the new trainees he'd hired started whispering behind him. Finally got rid of the old man. Place always smelled like a campfire. Totally. Leo's got the right idea. Just heat and serve. It's clean, it's efficient. I heard the old guy's a real hard-ass. Leo tried to reason with him a bunch of times. Just an old man stuck in his ways. I ignored them, my gaze fixed on that Austin's Original Brisket sign. 10 years ago, Leo's father, David Vance, stood under this very sign. He gripped my calloused hands, his eyes red-rimmed as he pleaded with me. "Arthur, please, use your gift. Help me keep this place alive. As long as you're here, you're the soul of this smokehouse. My son, he's not cut out for it. The future of this place is in your hands." His words were still ringing in my ears, as if he'd said them only yesterday. I looked away from the sign and silently untied the faded apron from my waist. I folded it neatly and placed on the butcher block that had served me for a decade, its surface a roadmap of countless cuts and scores. Leo waved his hand impatiently, like he was shooing a fly. "All right, Art, let's not get dramatic. Go see HR. They'll cut you a check for the month. You'll get every penny." He turned and bellowed at the kitchen staff. "Chop up all that useless post oak for the fireplace. Clear that space out. The new combi ovens and microwaves get here this afternoon." I watched as they dragged out the logs of post oak I had personally selected and seasoned for 3 years, leaving long, mournful scratches on the concrete floor. The new stainless steel prep tables gleamed harshly under the fluorescent lights. As I walked out, I passed the hostess stand. Maria, who had worked here for 20 years, looked up at me, her eyes welling with tears. She gave me a single, deep nod. Nothing was said, but everything was understood. My last apprentice, Marcus, the most promising kid I'd ever trained, came running after me. "Master," he cried out, his voice hoarse with panic. "You're really just leaving? Leo doesn't know a damn thing. What does he think you are? You can't go." The more he spoke, the more agitated he became, his voice trembling. Today he had them pour out the 10-year-old mother sauce you kept. Just dumped it down the drain like it was dishwater. That was the heart of this place. And 3 regulars already sent their brisket back today. Said it wasn't Vance's. Leo accused them of being planned from another restaurant and almost got in a fist fight. He's going to destroy this place, master. I put a hand on his shoulder and let out a long breath. Marcus, people make their own choices. You just keep working hard. With that, I walked away from Vance's Smokehouse, the secret rub recipe that had lived in my heart for decades, now tucked under my arm. Maybe I was obsolete, but a flavor that had defined a city for 100 years. It didn't deserve to just die. I went home, not to an apartment, but to a small bungalow tucked away on a quiet street in East Austin. The massive live oak in the yard was planted by my mentor, the man who taught me everything. I pushed open the door to my workshop, and the familiar scent of cedar and Old Spice washed over me. I moved a heavy workbench and pried up 3 loose floorboards. Beneath them sat a wooden box sealed for years. I opened it and respectfully lifted out a plaque of polished mesquite wood. It was warm to the touch, heavy with the weight of years. Burned into its surface were 4 words: Austin's original brisket. This was the genuine article. Inside the box, there was also a framed certificate, wrapped in oilcloth, its edges yellowed with age. Next to my name, Arthur Vance, were the words, James Beard Foundation, American Classics. I, Arthur Vance, was the sole proprietor of the Austin's original brisket brand. David Vance's restaurant had merely been operating under a license I had granted him, allowing him to use the name and my exclusive rub. Today, his son had personally torn that license to shreds. I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer. "William, I need you to draft a cease and desist letter regarding the brand and recipe license. Effective immediately. Send it via courier to the legal owner of Vance's Smokehouse, Leo Vance." On the other end of the line, William hesitated. "Arthur, are you sure? This is a relationship that goes back decades." My voice turned to ice. The relationship was with David, not his son. "Don't ask any more questions, William. Just do it." William didn't argue. "Okay, Arthur, it's done." That evening, Marcus showed up at my house. He looked miserable, a takeout box in his hand. "Master, they've switched over completely to the pre-cooked brisket. I was on the cutting line all day. The bark is just mush." He opened the box. A strange, artificial smoke smell drifted out. "Just taste it. Is this even edible?" The customers are furious. They're saying it tastes no different than the $50 frozen brisket from the supermarket. Leo had his manager deleting all the 1-star reviews on Yelp. He was practically shaking with anger. "I can't work there anymore. He's desecrating our name." I looked at him and sighed. "All right, stop yelling. If you don't want to work there, then don't. You can work with me from now on." Marcus's eyes went wide. He stammered, "And master, are you saying you'll take me on as your official apprentice?" I nodded. This craft, someone has to carry it on. Marcus was so overcome, he just stood there, speechless, before giving me the deepest, most respectful nod I'd ever seen. It was better than 1,000 words. Just then my phone rang. It was William. "Arthur." The letter was delivered and signed for. "However," he paused. "However what?" The recipient's reaction. My courier said that Mr. Vance saw it, laughed out loud, and said you must be desperate for a handout. He said your official paper was too stiff to even wipe his shoes with. Then, right in front of the courier, he tore the letter into pieces and threw it in the trash. I listened, my face a blank mask. He didn't know that from the moment he threw that letter away, every single vacuum-sealed brisket he sold under the name Austin's Original Brisket was another nail in his own coffin. Leo's reckoning came faster than I expected. On the third day of the pre-cooked brisket era, the dam broke. The old-timers, the ones who had been eating advances for 20, 30 years, their palates were sharper than any critics. "What is this garbage?" an old man with a shock of white hair yelled, slamming his fork down on the table. "The bark is soft, the meat is dry, and that real post-oak smoke, that secret spice flavor, it's gone. The bark here used to be like a crust. You'd tap it with a fork. This is like chewing on a wet napkin. Where's Arthur? Get him out here." The general manager could only offer insincere apologies, saying Arthur was getting old and had decided to retire. But the customers weren't buying it. On Yelp, Vance's Smokehouse's rating, once a rock-solid 4. 9 stars, plummeted to 2. 1. The reviews section became a war zone of angry patrons. "I've eaten at Vance's for 30 years. Today was my last time. A century-old legacy, down the drain. Traditional craft, more like traditional scam, passing off pre-cooked garbage as the real deal. The rub is different too. It's got this sweet chemical taste. Disgusting, I want my money back." Leo was furious. First, he hired a legion of bots to flood the page with 5-star reviews, filled with laughable, overwrought praise. "Wow, Vance's has a brand new upgraded brisket. The taste is amazing, so futuristic." Then he posted a sign out front, twisting the truth, claiming the negative reviews were malicious attacks from jealous competitors. After doing all that, he called me. The second I picked up, he started screaming, "You old bastard, are you behind this? I'm telling you, if you think you can use these dirty tricks to squeeze more money out of me, you're dreaming." I listened to his impotent rage, my own voice calm. "Mr. Vance, I'm just an obsolete old cook. I don't have that kind of power." Leo snorted. "Oh, cut the crap. Who else could it be? You think you can turn the customers against me? I'll show you what money can do." I couldn't help but laugh, a dry, humorless sound. "Mr. Vance, some flavors are burned into memory. Money can't erase them. All right, old man, spare me your philosophical nonsense." Leo cut me off. "I'm warning you. You pull another stunt, and I'll make sure you never cook in this town again." I didn't say another word. I just hung up. Not long after, the city's most famous food vlogger, Carnivore Carl, updated his YouTube channel. In the video, he sat in a booth at Vance's Smokehouse, looking with genuine sorrow at the sad plate of brisket in front of him. He shook his head slowly. "The legend," he said, his voice heavy, "is tarnished. Without Arthur Vance, the Smokehouse is just an empty shell. Vance's," he declared, looking straight into the camera, "is dead." The video exploded. It hit 10 million views overnight. Leo started to panic. Marcus told me that in his desperation to save his reputation, Leo had made a rash decision. He'd listened to some snake oil salesman. He paid $1 million for a new and improved secret recipe from a man who claimed he could replicate the original, but better. He was planning to use this new formula to shut everyone up. Seeing the legacy of Vance's being dragged through the mud like this, I knew I couldn't sit back any longer. I had to bring the true taste of Austin's original brisket back to the world. Marcus and I rented a tiny, forgotten storefront in an alleyway off the main drag. We cleaned the place ourselves, scrubbing away years of dust and grime. No fancy decor, no polished sign, not even enough matching tables and chairs. All we had was the seasoned smoker I'd hauled from my workshop, which I polished until it gleamed, and a cord of the finest post oak, which I'd split myself. I called the little place the pitmaster's cut. On opening day, I manned the smoker myself. The moment the first brisket came out of the pit, rested, and was ready to slice, a rich, intoxicating aroma of pure wood smoke and rendered beef fat billowed out and filled the entire alley. That smell was the only advertisement we needed. Soon, people from the neighborhood started following their noses to our door. "Oh my God, that's it. That's the smell," an older woman exclaimed after her first bite, her eyes growing misty. I grew up on this flavor. After Master Vance left the smokehouse, I thought I'd never taste it again. She looked at me, her face breaking into a wide, surprised grin. "You're Arthur Vance. You've finally opened your own place." Word of mouth spread like wildfire. Droves of old smokehouse regulars found their way to us, packing the tiny shop to the rafters. Within a few days, a line started forming outside my barely marked door. People would rather stand and eat on the curb than go back to the lavish, empty dining room advances. One day, Marcus came running up to me, waving his phone. "Master, look, the Texas Restaurant Association is holding the triennial Texas Brisket Invitational. It's the most prestigious competition in the state. The winner gets crowned the Brisket King. We have to enter. Let's show everyone who the real deal is." I looked at the news article and nodded. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. Below the announcement was a flood of promotional material for Vance's Smokehouse. Leo, seeing the competition as his only path to redemption, had thrown a fortune at advertising, buying up every available ad spot. In an interview, his tone was arrogant and defiant. "Some old-fashioned places think they can challenge Vance's Smokehouse. That's a joke," he boasted. "We will be competing with a brand new, upgraded, exclusive recipe, and we will defend the century-long honor of Austin's original brisket." I saw the words "exclusive recipe" and let out a cold laugh. That night, a friend of Marcus's who still worked in the kitchen at Vance's secretly sent him a message. After reading it, Marcus's face went pale, and he ran to find me in a panic. "Master, it's bad. It's really bad." He was out of breath, his voice strained. "My friend said that improved recipe Leo bought. He bought it from a traitor from our own school, a guy named Ricky Kuhn." A jolt went through me. A name I hadn't heard in years surfaced from the depths of my memory. Ricky Kuhn, my former apprentice. A talented kid, but his heart was rotten. He was kicked out by my own mentor for his crooked ways and for trying to steal the recipe. Marcus was on the verge of tears. "Master, didn't the old master kick him out after he only managed to steal half the rub formula? Leo is going to use a bastardized, fake recipe to pass himself off as Austin's original brisket at the competition." Hearing the name Ricky Kuhn from Marcus sent a storm through my mind. My former apprentice. He was naturally gifted, but impatient and dishonest. My mentor always said he lacked the patient heart of a true pitmaster and refused to teach him the final steps of the family recipe. Ricky grew bitter. He not only badmouthed our tradition all over town, but one night, during our mentor's birthday celebration, he broke into the old man's office and stole half of the written recipe. He vanished after that. That partial recipe was missing the most crucial core ingredients. Used improperly, it could ruin a piece of meat. The incident broke my mentor's heart. He fell ill shortly after. On his deathbed, he gripped my hand and made me promise to protect our legacy and never let a fraud dishonor our family's name. I never imagined he would resurface with someone like Leo Vance. The next day, Leo's counterattack began. Every major food blog and news site was running an exclusive interview with Vance's Smokehouse. The headlines were sensational. "Century-old institution betrayed by rogue apprentice. Secret recipe nearly stolen." In the article, Leo twisted the truth, painting me as a disgruntled apprentice who was fired for trying to steal the recipe and now held a grudge. He claimed my little shop was a cheap knockoff I'd started with the few scraps of knowledge I'd managed to pick up. A roadside shack like that isn't fit to shine the shoes of Vance's Smokehouse. Leo sneered for the cameras. The narrative immediately shifted. Public opinion was swayed. Unsavory characters started showing up at my shop. They wouldn't order food. They'd just loiter by the door, making snide comments. "Hey, is this the place run by that thief? You'd have to be crazy to eat here. Bad technique, worse character." Marcus, furious, grabbed a rolling pin and was about to charge out, but I held him back. His eyes were red with frustration and righteous anger, his voice thick with emotion. "Master, they're bullying us like this. Why don't we say something? If this keeps up, we'll be out of business." I shook my head and handed him a slice of freshly cut brisket. Arguing with fools is a waste of breath. Let them talk. A straight stick casts a straight shadow. I told my apprentice, "At the competition, we'll let the brisket do the talking." Seeing my lack of response, Leo grew even bolder. He and Ricky Kuhn went on television, appearing on the highest-rated food talk show in the city. On the show, Ricky put on a pained expression and spun a well-rehearsed tale. My mentor, Arthur, he was always a bit slow, only knew how to follow the old rules verbatim. The master could show him something 10 times, and he still wouldn't get it. For him to now use our tradition's name to peddle his knockoff brisket is a disgrace to our culinary family. Leo sat beside him, nodding gravely. adding that he had already filed a complaint with the Texas Restaurant Association, demanding my credentials be permanently revoked. I watched their disgusting performance for a few minutes before turning off the TV. I made a phone call. William, I need you to gather all evidence of Leo Vance's infringement on the Austin's original brisket trademark. Also, I want you to draft a formal, notarized complaint to the Texas Restaurant Association in my name, detailing Ricky Kuhn's history of theft and expulsion from my mentor's tutelage. Attach a certified copy of my James Beard Award and my trademark documents. Outside, the storm of rumors and accusations raged. But inside my small shop, it was just me and Marcus day after day, trimming, rubbing, and smoking. The fire in the pit burned hot and steady. I poured all my energy into the craft that had been passed down for 100 years. The day of the competition would be the day of their public disgrace. The day before the competition, reporters found my little shop in the alley. A young journalist shoved a microphone in my face, his question sharp and accusatory. Mr. Vance, what's your response to the allegations from Vance's Smokehouse that you stole their recipe and betrayed their trust? Another reporter jumped in. Is it true that you were nearly kicked out of your apprenticeship due to your lack of skill? Marcus, standing beside me, turned pale with rage. What kind of garbage are you spouting? He yelled at them. I held him back and spoke calmly into the cameras. You cook brisket for people to eat. Whether it's good, whether it's real. The customer's palate, the judge's tongue. They don't lie. Tomorrow, at the competition, the truth will come out. I said nothing more and turned back to the kitchen. My response was quickly spun as a guilty conscience and a tacit admission. Leo, by contrast, was an expert showman. He rented out the ballroom of a five-star hotel for a massive pre-competition press conference. He and Ricky Kuhn were both in attendance, waxing poetic about their innovation and heritage. Ricky's face was creased into a smug smile. My former colleague, Arthur, bless his heart, he was always a bit dense, stuck in the past. I remember one time, our mentor asked him to manage the fire, and he nearly burned the whole smokehouse down. He twisted the facts with dramatic flair, drawing laughter from the reporters. I, on the other hand, have built upon tradition, combining it with modern food science to upgrade our secret recipe. Leo proudly added, the brisket from Vance's Smokehouse represents the future. Their performance was met with a round of applause. Just then, the competition organizers officially announced the final panel of judges. The name of the chairman sent a shockwave through the entire Texas food scene. Julian Croft, a living legend in American gastronomy, a titan of the culinary world, and notoriously incorruptible. The story was that he once tasted MSG in a dish at a fine dining restaurant and publicly excoriated the celebrity chef so badly the man's career never recovered. When Marcus saw the name, he practically jumped for joy. Master, it's Julian Croft. Mr. Croft was your mentor's best friend. This is perfect. I nodded, a warmth spreading through my chest. Leo, clearly unaware of this connection, was still basking in the glow of his press conference, confident that the few minor judges he'd bribed would secure his victory. He even boasted to reporters that the champion's trophy was already his. The night before the competition, I didn't prep any meat. I fasted, showered, and changed into a simple, clean linen shirt. I respectfully took out my mentor's photograph and the James Beard medal he had helped me win and lit 3 sticks of incense. As the smoke curled upwards, I could almost see my mentor's stern but loving face. Master, your student has failed you and allowed your name to be disgraced. I bow my head 3 times. Tomorrow, in front of the entire city, I will clean house. I will take back the honor that belongs to us. I called Marcus. Manny, I want you to spread a rumor. Tell everyone that at the competition, I'll be demonstrating a long-lost technique. The single-slice full brisket cut. Marcus paused for a second, then understood. Yes, master, I'm on it. It was my mentor's signature move, a flourish he reserved for special occasions. Ricky Kuhn had been kicked out long before he was senior enough to even witness it. I wanted them to think I was bluffing. I wanted them to walk onto that stage thinking this whole competition was a joke. I wanted them to fall from the greatest possible height. On the day of the competition, the arena was packed. Every media outlet in the state had their cameras pointed at the center stage. My station, in a dramatic twist of fate, was right next to Leo's. He was dressed in a pristine, custom-tailored chef's coat, without a speck of dust on it. He was flanked by 4 equally spotless assistants. It was pure theater. He glanced over my setup, my simple tools, my lone apprentice Marcus, and my old, seasoned smoker, and his eyes filled with disdain. He didn't even speak to me, just sneered to Ricky Coon beside him, his voice just loud enough for me to hear. Look at that sad setup. Single slice full brisket? Yeah, right. He'll be lucky if he doesn't slice his own hand off. Ricky chimed in. He's a washed-up has-been. What could he possibly know? It's all a desperate bluff. The opening bell rang. Round 1. Meat selection. Leo's team produced perfectly uniform briskets from a refrigerated case, each one identical, as if stamped from mold. I, however, walked over to the supply table and began to personally inspect the dozens of briskets laid out. I felt the fat cap on each one, tested the density of the muscle, and weighed them in my hands. Only the most flawless prime brisket would earn a place in my smoker. At the judge's table, Julian Croft watched my selection process, his eyes lighting up with interest. He sat up a little straighter in his chair. Round 2. The cook. Leo's team used a top-of-the-line German electric smoker, capable of precise temperature control down to the degree. An assistant loaded the brisket, programmed the computer, and then stood back, chatting and scrolling on his phone. At my station, it was just me and Marcus, tending to the old pit, fueled by real post oak. I used no thermometers, no timers. I judged the fire by its scent and the color of its smoke. Now and then, I'd add a log or use a long hook to shift the meat. I watched the bark develop, from a pale yellow to a rich mahogany, and finally, to a perfect dark crust. Every flicker of the flame, every subtle change in the meat, was under my complete control. Halfway through, a cross breeze swept through the arena, causing the flames in my firebox to flare up. "Master," Marcus whispered, his voice tight with anxiety. I didn't turn. I simply narrowed the vent by a fraction of an inch and rotated the brisket a quarter turn. My movements were steady, unhurried. Leo saw this, and a smug, knowing smile crept across his face. Julian Croft, however, frowned, a look of concern on his face. Time ticked by. The moment I pulled my brisket from the smoker, a deep, rich, authentic aroma of wood smoke and rendered beef exploded outwards. The smell was powerful yet comforting, instantly filling the entire arena and overwhelming the thin, chemical scent coming from Leo's station. The entire audience inhaled deeply, a collective look of bliss on their faces. The food bloggers in the front row gasped, speaking excitedly into their cameras. "Oh my God, that's the smell from my childhood." When Leo caught a whiff of the real thing, his face changed. The arrogance and confidence vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic and disbelief. He was finally realizing that there are some things that expensive machines and fake recipes can never replicate. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple. The final round, the slicing, was over. 2 platters were carried to the judge's table. Vance's Smokehouse's brisket was presented on an ornate platter, garnished with carved vegetables and smoking dry ice. It was all for show. My brisket was served on a simple white ceramic platter, the slices laid out neatly. Simple, honest. The difference was stark. The judges tasted Leo's brisket first. The few I knew he'd paid off nodded and made a show of their approval. Yes, very innovative. A very modern texture. Indeed, the rub is quite unique. The sweetness is very forward, which will appeal to a younger demographic. Their comments were hollow and forced. But Julian Croft simply picked up a slice, placed it in his mouth, and chewed twice. His brow furrowed. He put his fork down, his face a mask of disappointment and contempt. He didn't even take a sip of water, just shook his head with a look of pure disdain. Leo's heart sank. Then, the attendant placed my platter in front of Mr. Croft. He picked up a slice, but before eating it, he held it to his nose and inhaled. That single action changed his entire demeanor. He placed the brisket in his mouth. A second later, a jolt went through his body. His fork nearly clattered to the table. His eyes were wide with shock and disbelief. Seeing this, Leo completely lost his composure. He jumped up, pointing at me, and screamed, "He cheated! There's something in his rub. Judges, don't let him fool you." He was trying to create a diversion, to sow chaos. But Julian Croft ignored him completely. He closed his eyes, savoring the flavor. After a long moment, he slowly opened them. They were glistening with unshed tears. He put down his fork, picked up the microphone, and his voice boomed through the arena. This flavor. His voice cracked with emotion. This is the taste of a brisket I had 30 years ago at my mentor's and his mentor's table. I thought this taste was lost to time. I've been searching for it for a decade. This, he declared, his voice ringing with absolute certainty, is the true Austin's original brisket. The crowd erupted. Julian Croft turned his furious gaze on Ricky Kuhn. "You!" he roared, his voice like thunder. "You dishonorable fraud. I was there the day your master threw you out. He fell ill because of the stress you caused him. You stole a fragment of a recipe and dared to pass it off as the real thing here. You have brought nothing but shame to his memory." Ricky Kuhn's legs gave out, and he crumpled to the floor, muttering, "It wasn't me, it wasn't me." Finally, Julian Croft turned to me, his eyes filled with emotion. He stood up from the judge's table and, facing the entire audience, made his final, solemn announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, the man standing before you, Arthur Vance, is the true, the one and only, the James Beard Award-winning heir to Austin's original brisket." In an instant, the arena exploded. Every camera, every spotlight, swiveled to focus on me. Leo and Ricky Kuhn were ashen-faced, their eyes vacant. Their charade was over. The moment Julian Croft finished his declaration, my lawyer, William, walked onto the stage. The massive screen behind him lit up with a crystal-clear projection. My James Beard certificate, the official seal gleaming. The trademark documents for Austin's original brisket, with the owner listed as Arthur Vance. And finally, the original licensing agreement I'd made with David Vance, followed by a copy of the cease and desist letter Leo had torn to pieces. William's voice was calm and commanding as he pointed to the date on the screen. According to federal law, Vance's Smokehouse, by continuing to use the Austin's original brisket trademark for commercial purposes after receiving a formal termination of their license, has committed willful and egregious trademark infringement. Here are their sales records from that period. Every single transaction was illegal. The evidence was irrefutable. The murmurs from the crowd swelled into a roar of outrage directed at Leo. "Con artist, give us our money back. He passed off fake food as a city treasure. It's disgusting. He needs to be prosecuted. Shut him down." Ricky Kuhn stared at the screen, saw his world collapse, and started whimpering for mercy before security guards hauled him off the stage. He was facing a lifetime ban from the Restaurant Association and felony charges for commercial fraud. Leo completely snapped. He scrambled up from the floor, pointing a trembling finger at me, his eyes wild. This was all your setup. You old fraud. You ruined me. I'll kill you." He lunged at me like a feral animal before being tackled and restrained by security. Just then, from a side entrance, a figure in a wheelchair was slowly pushed onto the stage. It was Leo's father, David Vance, who was supposed to be in a long-term care facility overseas. He took in a scene of chaos, and his body began to tremble with rage, his lips turning blue. With a strength born of pure fury, he struggled to his feet, walked over to his son, and with all his might, slapped him across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the suddenly silent arena. "You worthless boy!" David choked out, tears streaming down his face. "I told you to protect our legacy, and you threw it away like trash." He turned to me, then to the judges and the audience, and bowed deeply. "Everyone, I failed as a father. I am so sorry. Arthur Vance was the real owner of this tradition. I, David Vance, was merely the man he trusted to manage his restaurant. It was never my family's to begin with." The whole truth was out. The crowd gasped as one. David Vance's cries were filled with anguish. "I gave you the restaurant to protect, not to destroy. How could I have raised such a disgrace?" Leo looked at his furious father, at my impassive face, and at the thousands of contemptuous eyes staring at him from the crowd. His pride, his arrogance, every lie he'd built his life upon, shattered in that instant. His mind broke. He collapsed to the floor, one moment pointing and screaming at me, the next crying his father. "You all pushed me to this. All of you. He alternated between manic laughter and convulsive sobs, completely unhinged. The competition's result was a foregone conclusion. I won the Brisket King trophy with a unanimous vote. My little shop, the Pitmaster's Cut, became an overnight sensation, the new culinary landmark in Austin. A permanent line snaked down the alley, with tourists dragging their suitcases straight from the airport to my door. The headlines were no longer filled with Leo's lies, but with praise for my dedication to the craft. As for Vance's Smokehouse, its day of judgment had come. It was hit with a multi-million-dollar fine for trademark infringement and false advertising. Then, for serving substandard prepackaged food that violated health codes, the city revoked its business license and shut it down for good. Buried under a mountain of debt and public scorn, it declared bankruptcy. The century-old sign was taken down by the city, a quiet end to a loud legacy. Marcus told me later that when the liquidators came, the equipment they hauled out was so worthless even the scrap metal dealers didn't want it. Leo Vance, facing charges of commercial fraud and numerous infringements, was not only financially ruined, but was also looking at significant prison time. Sometime later, I visited David in the hospital. He looked like he had aged 20 years overnight, his hair completely white. He held my hand, his voice raspy with guilt. "Arthur, I'm so sorry. I failed you, and I failed my own father. I don't have the right to face you." He pressed the deed to the old smokehouse property into my hand. "The building, it should have always been yours. Please, don't let that spot go to waste. It's the last thing I'll ever ask of you." I looked at his tired, broken face, remembering the day he'd first begged me to help him, and a wave of sorrow washed over me. I accepted the deed. A month later, a new restaurant opened at the original location of Vance's Smokehouse. I didn't call it Vance's, and I didn't call it the Pitmaster's Cut. In front of the old-timers from the neighborhood and all the city's media, I brought back the polished mesquite plaque and hung it myself over the door where it belonged. Austin's original brisket. Marcus, forged in the fire of the competition, was now a true pitmaster in his own right. I officially took him on as my protege, ready to pass down everything I knew. The staff was made up of the old-timers Leo had fired, including Maria from the hostess stand. Everyone came home. On opening day, the house was packed. The familiar faces of old regulars filled the dining room, and Julian Croft himself came to offer his congratulations. He clapped me on the shoulder, his voice thick with emotion. "You did it, Arthur. You protected the soul of our craft." I stood before that familiar, roaring smoker, breathing in the scent of clean post oak smoke, and a sense of deep peace settled over me. The craft was never obsolete. The only things that go out of style are the people who are too greedy and too foolish to appreciate it. Watching the bustling scene, Marcus came to stand beside me. "Master," he asked quietly, "are things only going to get better from here?" I watched the flames dance in the firebox and smiled. "We don't chase trends, Manny. We make a flavor that the trends will have to remember." The fire was burning bright. My legacy was just getting started,